In the cold depths of space, where corporate greed had stripped away every valuable resource and left behind only worthless rocks, humanity's greatest discovery would come not from exploration or conquest, but from the simple act of a desperate woman buying what everyone else had dismissed as junk. Sometimes the universe's most profound gifts are hidden in the places where no one bothers to look. Sometimes salvation wears the mask of abandonment. And sometimes, 3 credits can change the fate of an entire species. What Maya Chen found in that forgotten hangar on Kepler 42c wasn't just a ship. It was proof that humans had always been destined for something far greater than anyone had ever dared to imagine. Maya Chen's breath formed small clouds in the recycled air of her cramped living pod as she stared at the holographic display showing her bank balance. 3 credits and 47 cents. After 2 years of unemployment following the collapse of the Martian Mining Consortium, this was all that remained of her life savings. The irony wasn't lost on her that she, a former geological survey specialist who had once mapped entire asteroid fields worth billions, now couldn't afford a decent meal. The evacuation notice glowed red on her wall display, its automated voice droning the same message it had been repeating for weeks. All residents of Habitat Block 7 must vacate within 72 hours. This facility is scheduled for demolition to make way for the new corporate plaza development. Failure to comply will result in forcible removal and legal action. Maya rubbed her eyes, feeling the grit of exhaustion and despair. She had applied for over 200 jobs in the past month alone. Every position either required connections she didn't have or experience with technologies that had made her skills obsolete. The galaxy had moved on without her, leaving her stranded in the backwash of progress like debris floating in the void. Her personal communicator chimed with an incoming message. Maya almost ignored it, expecting another rejection letter, but something made her open it anyway. The sender was listed as Kepler Colonial Authority Asset Liquidation Division. Attention! Final notice regarding unclaimed properties on Kepler 442c. Due to complete abandonment of the system following atmospheric processor failure, all remaining assets will be auctioned at minimum bid prices. Auction closes in 48 hours. No reserve prices. All sales final. Maya frowned. Kepler 442c had been one of the early colonial failures, a moon orbiting a gas giant that had been terraformed at enormous expense only to be abandoned when the atmospheric processors had malfunctioned, leaving the surface barely habitable. She remembered reading about it in the industry reports years ago. The entire colony had been evacuated in a matter of weeks, leaving behind infrastructure worth billions of credits that was now apparently being sold off as scrap. Curiosity overtook despair, and Maya opened the auction catalog. Page after page of industrial equipment, prefab housing units, mining gear, and transportation vehicles scrolled past. The bidding was pathetic. Items worth hundreds of thousands of credits were going for mere hundreds, and some had no bids at all. Then she saw it. Lot 2847, Industrial Hangar, 200 meters by 150 meters, includes basic atmospheric controls and power coupling. Contents unknown, sold as is. Minimum bid, 1 credit. Maya stared at the listing. A hangar that size could house a small fleet of ships or serve as a manufacturing facility. Even in its current state, the scrap metal alone would be worth thousands. The fact that it had no bids was almost impossible to believe. She dug deeper into the listing details. The hangar was located in what had been the industrial district of New Galveston, the main settlement on Kepler 442c. The listing noted that atmospheric readings were within acceptable ranges for human habitation, though environmental suits were recommended. Most importantly, the hangar came with a permanent deed, meaning full ownership rights including mineral extraction if any valuable deposits were discovered on the property. Maya's hands trembled as she navigated to the bidding interface. 3 credits, she could place a bid for 3 credits and potentially own a piece of real estate larger than most corporate facilities. Even if the hangar was completely empty, she could sell the metal for enough to start over somewhere else. It was insane, but what did she have to lose? The bidding system required identity verification and a credit check. Maya submitted her information, half expecting to be rejected for insufficient funds, but the system accepted her credentials. She found herself staring at the bid entry field, cursor blinking next to the minimum amount. 1 credit. For a moment, paranoia crept in. This had to be some kind of scam or mistake. Why would anyone sell valuable property for practically nothing? She researched Kepler 442c more thoroughly, reading through the colonial records and abandonment reports. The atmospheric processor failure had been catastrophic but not immediate. The colonists had been evacuated in an organized fashion, taking most valuable equipment with them. The remaining infrastructure had been deemed too expensive to relocate, so it was simply abandoned. That explained why the prices were so low. The cost of traveling to Kepler 442c, let alone transporting materials back to inhabited systems, made most of these assets worthless to anyone with better options. But Maya didn't have better options. She had nothing but 3 credits and a desperate need for something, anything, to change her circumstances. She entered a bid of 3 credits and submitted it. The confirmation message appeared instantly. Bid accepted. Current high bid, 3 credits. Time remaining, 47 hours, 23 minutes. Maya sat back in her chair, simultaneously exhilarated and terrified by what she had just done. 3 credits represented her entire liquid net worth. If someone outbid her, she would be left with less than 50 cents to her name. But something deep in her gut told her this was the right move, the kind of calculated risk that had made her successful in her former career. She spent the next 2 days obsessively checking the auction status. No other bids appeared. As the final hour approached, Maya found herself pacing the small confines of her living pod, unable to focus on anything else. With 5 minutes remaining, she refreshed the page one last time. Still no other bids. The auction closed automatically at exactly 2400 hours, standard colonial time. A new message appeared in Maya's inbox within seconds. Congratulations! You have successfully won Lot 2847. Final bid, 3 credits. Property deed and access codes will be transmitted within 24 hours. Payment will be automatically deducted from your registered account. Thank you for participating in the Kepler Colonial Authority asset liquidation. Maya stared at the message for a long time, hardly believing it was real. She now owned a massive industrial hangar on a distant moon, purchased for less than the cost of a cup of coffee. The irony was almost overwhelming. Yesterday, she had been facing homelessness. Today, she was a property owner. The practical implications began to sink in. She would need transportation to Kepler 442c, environmental equipment and supplies for an extended stay. Her remaining 47 cents wouldn't cover any of that. But Maya had learned long ago that problems were just opportunities wearing disguises. She began researching transport options. The commercial passenger lines didn't service Kepler 442c anymore, but cargo freighters occasionally made runs to the system to pick up salvage. She found a shipping company called Maverick Freight that advertised flexible passenger accommodations on their salvage runs. Their next scheduled departure to the Kepler system was in 6 days. Maya sent them a message explaining her situation. She offered to work passage, using her geological survey training to help identify valuable salvage sites in exchange for transportation and basic supplies. To her surprise, they responded within hours with an acceptance. The captain, a woman named Sarah Volkov, said they could use someone with Maya's expertise to evaluate potential mining claims on the various moons in the system. The property deed arrived the next morning along with access codes for the hangar's basic systems. Maya studied the facility schematics, noting the power distribution layout and atmospheric controls. The hangar was actually more sophisticated than the basic listing had suggested, with multiple subsections and what appeared to be a small administrative area with living quarters. As she packed her few belongings into a single duffel bag, Maya felt a mixture of excitement and terror she hadn't experienced since her first assignment as a junior geologist. She was about to travel to an abandoned world to claim property she had bought sight unseen, with no clear plan beyond hoping to find something valuable enough to sell. The Maverick Freight departure bay was a chaotic maze of cargo containers and loading equipment. Maya found the ship easily enough. It was the only vessel that looked like it had been assembled from spare parts and held together with determination. Captain Volkov turned out to be a compact woman with prematurely gray hair and the kind of calm confidence that came from years of making impossible things work. "You're either very brave or very crazy," Volkov told Maya as she showed her to a tiny passenger compartment that had obviously been converted from a storage closet. "Most people won't go near Kepler. 442C. The stories about what happened there have gotten pretty wild over the years." "What kind of stories?" Maya asked, settling onto the narrow bunk that would be her home for the next 10 days. Volkov shrugged. "The usual stuff. Strange lights in the abandoned buildings, equipment turning on by itself, that sort of thing. Probably just automated systems running on backup power, but salvagers tend to be a superstitious bunch. The ones who have been there say the whole place feels wrong somehow." Maya nodded, filing the information away but not letting it concern her too much. She had worked on dozens of abandoned facilities over the years, and they all had their quirks. When complex systems were left unattended, they often developed unexpected behaviors as different components went offline at different rates. The journey to Kepler, 442C, passed slowly. Maya spent most of her time studying the geological surveys of the moon and the surrounding system, looking for anything that might have been missed by the original colonization effort. She also researched the history of New Galveston, trying to understand what had made the colony viable in the first place. The settlement had been established primarily as a logistics hub for mining operations throughout the Kepler system. The gas giant Kepler, 442, was rich in helium-3 and other rare isotopes, while several of the outer moons contained significant mineral deposits. New Galveston had served as a refining and shipping center, processing raw materials for transport to core systems. The atmospheric processor failure had been caused by a cascade of technical problems that ultimately proved too expensive to fix. Rather than invest in completely rebuilding the terraforming infrastructure, the corporate backers had decided to write off the entire operation as a loss. Within months, New Galveston had transformed from a thriving industrial center to a ghost town. As the Maverick Freight approached Kepler, 442, Maya got her first look at her new property's location. The moon was a mottled brown and gray sphere, its surface scarred by mining operations and industrial development. The thin atmosphere gave the sky a perpetual twilight appearance, even during the day. New Galveston appeared on the horizon as a cluster of dark buildings and infrastructure spreading across several square kilometers of relatively flat terrain. From space, it looked like abandoned Toy City, all the pieces still in place but no one left to play with them. Captain Volkov announced over the ship's intercom that they would be landing at the old cargo port in approximately 2 hours. Maya gathered her belongings and made her way to the observation deck for a better view of her destination. What she saw made her breath catch in her throat. The industrial district where her hangar was located stretched along the eastern edge of the settlement, a collection of massive structures that had clearly been built to handle enormous volumes of cargo and materials. Even abandoned, the scale was impressive. Maya began to understand why no one else had bid on the hangar. The sheer magnitude of the empty infrastructure was almost overwhelming. The Maverick Freight touched down on a landing pad that showed signs of recent use, suggesting that salvage operations were still ongoing despite the rumors and superstitions. Maya could see several other ships in the distance, their crews probably working to extract valuable materials before the authorities changed their minds about allowing access to the system. Captain Volkov accompanied Maya to the surface, helping her carry the environmental equipment she would need to safely explore her property. The atmosphere was breathable but thin, requiring supplemental oxygen for any extended activity. The gravity was slightly lower than Earth standard, giving Maya's steps a subtle bounce that felt odd after years on higher gravity stations. "Your hangar is about 3 kilometers that way," Volkov said, pointing toward a cluster of large buildings on the horizon. The access roads are still intact, so you should be able to walk it easily enough. My crew will be here for 5 days loading salvage. If you need extraction before then, use your emergency beacon and we'll come get you." Maya thanked the captain and began walking toward her property, her footsteps echoing in the thin air. The empty streets of New Galveston stretched around her, lined with abandoned shops and residential buildings. Occasionally, she glimpsed movement in her peripheral vision, but when she looked directly, she saw only shadows and the occasional piece of debris blown by the wind. The industrial district was even more impressive up close. Massive processing facilities and warehouses towered above her, their darkened windows like empty eyes watching her passage. Maya felt a chill that had nothing to do with the thin atmosphere. There was something unsettling about the complete emptiness, the sense that thousands of people had simply vanished overnight. She found her hangar after an hour of walking, guided by the facility markers and her portable navigation unit. The building was exactly as described in the listing, an enormous rectangular structure that could have housed a small fleet of ships. The main entrance was sealed with a heavy airlock door, its control panel dark but still functional. Maya entered the access code she had been provided, and the door cycled open with a hiss of equalizing pressure. Emergency lighting flickered on automatically, revealing a vast empty space that stretched beyond the reach of the dim illumination. She stepped inside and activated her portable floodlights, sweeping them across the cavernous interior. The hangar was not empty as she had expected. Instead, it contained something that made her heart stop. Sitting in the center of the space, covered by a layer of dust but unmistakably intact, was a starship unlike anything Maya had ever seen before. Maya stood frozen in the entrance of the hangar, her floodlights illuminating a vessel that defied immediate classification. The ship was roughly cylindrical, perhaps 60 meters in length, with sleek lines that suggested both speed and power, but it was the hull material that made her catch her breath. Instead of the standard titanium alloy or composite materials used in human shipbuilding, this vessel appeared to be constructed from some kind of crystalline substance that seemed to absorb and reflect light in impossible ways. The ship's surface was covered in intricate patterns that were definitely not random corrosion or damage. They formed geometric designs that hurt to look at directly, as if they existed in more dimensions than Maya's eyes could properly process. Some areas of the hull appeared to be completely transparent, revealing glimpses of internal structures that followed no design philosophy she recognized. Maya forced herself to move, her legs feeling like lead as she walked closer to the impossible vessel. Her scanner was going crazy, registering materials that weren't in its database and energy readings that made no sense. According to the device, the ship was completely inert, but there were faint electromagnetic signatures that suggested dormant systems rather than true abandonment. She walked slowly around the perimeter of the ship, documenting everything with her camera and scanner. The landing gear was extended, suggesting the vessel had landed here under its own power rather than being transported. There were no obvious signs of damage or deterioration despite what had to be years of abandonment. Near what appeared to be the stern of the ship, Maya found something that made her stomach lurch. A section of hull plating had been removed, revealing access to internal systems. Scattered around the area were tools and equipment that were definitely human in origin. Someone had been working on this ship, and recently. Maya examined the tools more closely. They were standard engineering implements, the kind used for electronics work and systems analysis. Several were still connected to portable power sources, their displays showing diagnostic routines that had been interrupted mid-process. Whoever had been here had left in a hurry. She found a data pad lying beside an open access panel. The screen was cracked but still functional, showing the last entries made by whoever had been working on the ship. The logs were signed by Dr. Elena Vasquez, dated just 3 months ago. Day 47. Still no progress on the interface protocols. The ship's systems are definitely active but operating on principles I can't comprehend. The energy readings are off the charts, but I can't find any conventional power source. It's like the entire hull is some kind of exotic battery or reactor. Day 52 made contact with what I think is the ship's computer. It's not responding to any standard communication protocols, but there's definitely intelligence there. I've tried mathematical sequences, prime numbers, even music. No response to any of it. Day 58, the breakthrough came from my daughter's homework of all things. She was working on a linguistics project about how different cultures develop writing systems. I tried using basic symbolic logic instead of complex mathematics, and the ship responded immediately. It's been trying to communicate with us all along. Maya scrolled through more entries, her excitement growing with each revelation. Dr. Vasquez had apparently been part of some kind of research team that had discovered the ship and spent months trying to understand its technology, but the logs ended abruptly, with no explanation of what had happened to the research team. The last entry was only 2 lines long. The ship is waking up. We may have made a terrible mistake. Maya looked up from the datapad to stare at the mysterious vessel. If Dr. Vasquez was right about the ship being active, then Maya's presence here might be triggering some kind of response. She activated her emergency beacon and set it to standby mode, ready to call for extraction if things went wrong. But curiosity overrode caution. Maya approached the open access panel and examined the connections. Dr. Vasquez had made standard human interface cables had been jury-rigged to connect to ports that followed no design standard she recognized. The alien connections were elegant flowing curves that seemed to grow from the ship's hull rather than being mechanically attached. Maya connected her own scanner to one of the interface points using the same jury-rigged setup that Dr. Vasquez had created. Immediately, her scanner's display filled with data streams that scrolled too fast to follow. But buried in the chaos, she could see patterns that almost made sense. The ship was definitely active, with multiple systems running in some kind of standby mode. There were power signatures that suggested a fusion reactor, but the readings were unlike anything in Maya's experience. The energy output was enormous but completely stable, as if the reactor had been running for years without any fluctuation or maintenance. More disturbing were the sensor readings. The ship was scanning everything in its immediate vicinity with remarkable precision. Maya could see her own biosignature highlighted in the data stream, along with detailed analyses of her equipment, clothing, and even her body chemistry. The ship knew she was here and it was studying her. Maya was about to disconnect her scanner when something changed in the data stream. The random patterns suddenly organized themselves into something that looked almost like language. Symbols appeared on her display, forming sequences that suggested communication attempts. Following Dr. Vasquez's notes, Maya tried to respond using simple mathematical concepts. She input the sequence for prime numbers, then moved on to basic geometric ratios. The ship's response was immediate and overwhelming. Her scanner's display filled with complex diagrams and symbol sequences that were clearly some form of technical documentation. Maya realized she was looking at the ship's operating manual, or at least a portion of it. The symbols were gradually resolving into concepts she could understand, as if the ship was learning to communicate in human terms. Propulsion systems, navigation protocols, life support configurations, it was all there waiting to be understood. But it was the ship's history that truly captured Maya's attention. According to the data streams, this vessel was not of human origin. It had been built by another species, one that had apparently visited this system long before humans arrived. The ship had been left here deliberately, placed in dormant mode to wait for someone with the intelligence to activate its systems. The implications were staggering. This was proof of alien intelligence, technology that was clearly centuries ahead of human capabilities, and it had been sitting undetected in an abandoned hangar for years. Maya understood now why Dr. Vasquez's team had been excited and why they might have been concerned about the consequences of their discovery. Maya spent hours reviewing the information the ship was providing, trying to understand the basic principles of its operation. The propulsion system appeared to manipulate space-time directly rather than relying on conventional thrust, allowing for faster-than-light travel without the massive energy requirements of human jump drive technology. The ship's computer was some kind of quantum consciousness, that operated on principles that barely translated into human concepts. Most remarkably, the ships seemed to be designed specifically for human use. All of the control interfaces could be operated by creatures with human anatomy and reflexes. The life support systems were configured for Earth normal atmosphere and pressure. It was as if the ship's builders had known exactly what kind of beings would eventually discover it. As the day wore on, Maya began to understand why Dr. Vasquez's team might have been concerned. The ship wasn't just advanced technology, it was a test. The aliens who built it had left it here as a way of evaluating the intelligence and moral development of whoever found it. The ship's systems would only fully activate for beings who demonstrated certain characteristics: curiosity, persistence, and most importantly, peaceful intent. Maya realized that her presence here was no accident. The auction that had allowed her to purchase the hangar for 3 credits, the lack of other bidders, even her desperate circumstances that had led her to take such a seemingly crazy risk, it all felt like part of some larger design. The ship had been waiting for the right person to find it, someone who would approach it with wonder rather than greed. The sun was setting outside the hangar, casting long shadows through the few windows in the massive structure. Maya activated her portable habitat shelter and set up a temporary camp near the ship. She wasn't ready to leave, not when she was on the verge of understanding something that could change humanity's future. That night, as she lay in her sleeping bag looking up at the alien vessel, Maya began to plan her next moves. She couldn't handle this discovery alone, but she also couldn't trust it to government or corporate interests who might weaponize the technology. She needed to find people who shared her sense of wonder and responsibility, scientists and engineers who would treat this gift with the respect it deserved. But first, she needed to understand what had happened to Dr. Vasquez and her team. The abrupt end to the research log suggested they had encountered some kind of problem, but there were no signs of violence or equipment failure in the hangar. It was as if they had simply vanished. Maya spent the next day exploring the ship more thoroughly, using the access points Dr. Vasquez had established to delve deeper into its systems. She discovered that the vessel had extensive sensor capabilities that allowed it to monitor activity throughout the entire Kepler system. The ship's record showed several visits by salvage teams over the years, but most had ignored the hangar completely. Dr. Vasquez's team had been different. They had specifically sought out the ship based on some kind of prior knowledge, arriving with equipment and expertise that suggested they had known what to expect. Their research had progressed rapidly, far faster than Maya's amateur efforts. The ship's logs also revealed something else that made Maya's blood run cold. 3 months ago, just before Dr. Vasquez's final log entry, the ship had detected the approach of another vessel, not human in origin, but using technology similar to the ship's own systems. The alien vessel had remained in the outer system for several days before departing, but its presence had clearly triggered some kind of response from the ship. Maya began to understand the true significance of Dr. Revenant Vasquez's last entry, "The ship is waking up," hadn't referred to the vessel becoming active. It had been active all along. It had referred to the ship's creators taking notice of human activity in the system. The ship Maya had discovered wasn't just a piece of abandoned alien technology. It was a beacon, a way for its creators to monitor the progress of human civilization. Vasquez's research had apparently triggered some kind of alert, bringing representatives of the alien species to investigate. Maya faced a terrible choice. She could attempt to complete Dr. Vasquez's research and fully activate the ship's systems, potentially gaining access to technology that could advance human civilization by centuries. But doing so would also announce humanity's presence to an alien species whose intentions were completely unknown. Alternatively, she could try to reverse Dr. Vasquez's work and return the ship to dormant status, keeping the secret safe but sacrificing the greatest discovery in human history. Either choice carried enormous risks and consequences that would affect the entire species. As Maya wrestled with this decision, she began to notice changes in the ship's behavior. The data streams it was providing became more complex and detailed, as if it sensed her growing understanding and was adjusting its communication accordingly. The vessel was clearly evaluating her. just as she was evaluating it. On her third night in the hangar, Maya was awakened by a soft humming sound. She emerged from her shelter to find the ship's hull glowing with a faint inner light, the crystalline patterns more visible than they had been before. The vessel was beautiful and terrifying at the same time, a work of art that also represented the unknown future of human civilization. Maya approached the ship and placed her hand on its hull. The material was warm to the touch and seemed to pulse with energy. For a moment, she felt a sensation that might have been communication on a level deeper than words or symbols. The ship was trying to tell her something, but the meaning was just beyond her understanding. She realized that she needed help. This discovery was too important and too dangerous for one person to handle alone. Maya began composing messages to the few people in her professional network who might understand the magnitude of what she had found. Scientists who valued knowledge over profit, engineers who could appreciate the elegant solutions the alien technology represented. But even as she reached out for assistance, Maya couldn't shake the feeling that time was running out. The ship's behavior was becoming increasingly active, its systems cycling through routines that suggested preparation for something. Whether that something was beneficial or catastrophic remained to be seen. Maya spent her remaining time in the hangar documenting everything she could about the ship and its systems. She copied Dr. Vasquez's research files and added her own observations, creating a comprehensive record that could guide future research. If something happened to her, at least the knowledge wouldn't be lost. On her final morning in the hangar, as she prepared to return to the Maverick freight for extraction, Maya made a discovery that changed everything. Hidden in the ship's deepest system files was a message clearly intended for human researchers. The message was from the ship's builders, explaining the true purpose of their gift to humanity. They were an ancient species that had long ago transcended the need for physical existence, but they remembered the struggles of younger civilizations trying to find their place in the universe. The ship was both a test and a tool designed to help worthy species take their next evolutionary step. But the message also contained a warning. Other species in the galaxy were not as benevolent. Some viewed emerging civilizations as threats to be eliminated before they could become competition. The ship's activation would serve as a signal to these hostile forces, alerting them to humanity's growing technological capabilities. The aliens who had built the ship offered humanity a choice: accept their gift and gain the technology to defend against future threats, or reject it and remain hidden but vulnerable. There was no middle ground, no way to gain the benefits without accepting the risks. Maya realized that Dr. Vasquez and her team had faced this same choice 3 months ago. Their disappearance wasn't the result of accident or alien abduction. They had made their decision and acted on it. The question was whether they had chosen to activate the ship or destroy it. As Maya gathered her equipment for the journey back to civilization, she carried with her the weight of a decision that would determine humanity's future. In her pocket was a simple data crystal containing everything she had learned about the alien ship. She also carried the access codes that would allow her to return and complete what Dr. Vasquez had started. Maya Chen had come to Kepler, 442c, looking for something to salvage from her ruined life. Instead, she had found something that could salvage the future of human civilization itself. Now she had to decide what to do with that terrible gift. The journey back to inhabited space aboard the Maverick freight gave Maya 5 days to consider her next move. She had sent carefully worded messages to 3 individuals she trusted, each a former colleague who had the technical expertise to understand what she had discovered. Dr. James Harrison, a xenobiology specialist she had worked with on Mars. Dr. Sarah Kim, a theoretical physicist whose research focused on exotic propulsion systems. And Marcus Webb, a systems engineer with a reputation for discretion and ethical decision-making. None of her messages explicitly mentioned alien technology. Instead, Maya had crafted them as requests for consultation on anomalous materials and unconventional engineering solutions she had encountered during salvage operations. She had included just enough technical data to intrigue them without revealing the true magnitude of her discovery. Captain Volkov had noticed Maya's preoccupation during the return journey. Find something interesting in that hangar of yours? She had asked during dinner on the second day. You could say that, Maya replied carefully. Nothing immediately valuable, but definitely worth further investigation. Volkov had nodded knowingly. The best salvage always requires patience. I've seen people walk away from fortunes because they couldn't see past the rust and dust to what was underneath. Maya appreciated the captain's assumption that she had found conventional salvage. It made maintaining her cover story much easier. By the time the Maverick freight docked at Ceres Station, Maya had received responses from all three of her contacts. Dr. Harrison was intrigued by her materials analysis and offered to meet her at his laboratory on Europa. Kim wanted to see the propulsion data immediately and suggested a secure conference call. Marcus Webb was characteristically cautious, requesting more information before committing to any involvement. Maya decided to start with Dr. Harrison. His xenobiology background would be invaluable if she was going to understand the alien perspective behind the ship's design. More importantly, she trusted him to keep the discovery confidential until they could determine the best course of action. The journey to Europa took 3 days aboard a commercial transport. Maya spent the time refining her approach, deciding how much to reveal and in what order. She had concluded that the full truth would be too overwhelming to present all at once. Better to introduce her colleagues to the discovery gradually, allowing them to process each revelation before moving to the next. Dr. Harrison's laboratory was located in one of Europa's deep ice research facilities, designed to study extremophile organisms that might exist in the Moon's subsurface ocean. When Maya arrived, she found him examining samples from a recent drilling expedition. His attention focused on microscopic life forms that thrived in conditions that would kill most Earth-based organisms. "Maya, it's wonderful to see you again," Harrison greeted her warmly. "I was sorry to hear about the consortium collapse. Idiotic corporate decisions as usual. Your geological surveys were always the most thorough and accurate in the industry." Maya thanked him and settled into a chair beside his workstation. "Jim, what I'm about to show you needs to stay strictly confidential. I'm talking about absolute secrecy until we can determine the implications." Harrison's expression grew serious. "Of course. Is this related to the materials analysis you mentioned in your message?" Maya activated her portable display and began showing him the scanner readings she had taken from the alien ship. She started with the whole composition analysis, presenting it as an unknown alloy she had discovered in an abandoned facility. Harrison studied the data with growing fascination. "This is extraordinary. The crystalline structure is unlike anything I've seen before. The material appears to be self-organizing at the molecular level, constantly adjusting its properties in response to environmental conditions. Where exactly did you find this? Before I answer that, I need to know if you're willing to be part of something that could change everything we understand about technology and our place in the universe." Harrison set down his datapad and looked at Maya directly. "That's quite a claim. Are you saying this material is not of human origin?" Maya took a deep breath and made her decision. "I'm saying that what I found on Kepler 42c is a fully functional starship built by an alien civilization, and it's been waiting for someone like us to discover it." For a long moment, Harrison said nothing. Then he laughed, a short bark of disbelief. "Maya, I know the unemployment has been difficult, but this kind of fantasy isn't like you. If this is some kind of elaborate joke," Maya showed him the video footage of the ship, the recordings of the alien data streams, and excerpts from Dr. Vasquez's research logs. Harrison's skepticism gradually transformed into wonder as the evidence mounted. "My God," he whispered finally. "This is real, isn't it? We're looking at proof of intelligent alien life. We're looking at a gift. The ship's builders left it for us to find, along with instructions for its operation. But there's a catch." She explained the choice the aliens had offered humanity, the risks of activation versus the consequences of remaining hidden. Harrison listened in silence, occasionally stopping her to request clarification or additional data. "This Dr. Vasquez," he said finally. "What happened to her team?" "I don't know. They disappeared 3 months ago, just after the ship's builders sent representatives to investigate their progress. I think they made their choice and acted on it, but I can't tell whether they chose activation or destruction. Harrison was quiet for several minutes, processing the implications. "We need more expertise," he said finally. "This decision affects all of humanity, not just us. We need people who understand the technological implications, the strategic consequences, and the ethical dimensions." Maya nodded. "I've already reached out to Sarah Kim and Marcus Webb. Sarah can help us understand the propulsion technology, and Marcus has experience with large-scale systems integration. But we need to be careful about who else we bring in. The wrong people could turn this into a disaster." Agreed. Corporate interests would try to weaponize the technology, and most governments would probably do the same. We need people who understand that some discoveries are too important for narrow thinking. Over the next several days, Maya and Harrison worked together to analyze the alien data more thoroughly. Harrison's biological expertise proved invaluable in understanding the ship's life support systems and the physiological requirements of its builders. The aliens had been remarkably similar to humans in their basic needs, requiring similar atmospheric composition and gravitational conditions. "This is what bothers me most," Harrison said during one of their sessions. "The ship is too perfectly suited for human use. Either we're dealing with an incredible coincidence, or the builders knew exactly what kind of beings would find it." "The ship's records suggest they've been monitoring Earth for centuries," Maya replied. "They probably know as much about human biology and psychology as we do ourselves." Their analysis was interrupted by an encrypted message from Dr. Kim. She had reviewed the propulsion data Maya had sent and wanted an immediate conference call. When they connected, Kim's excitement was obvious even through the secured communication link. "The energy signatures you've recorded are impossible according to our current understanding of physics," Kim said without preamble. "The power output exceeds anything we can achieve with fusion technology, but there's no evidence of antimatter or exotic matter usage. Where exactly are these readings coming from?" Maya and Harrison exchanged glances. They had agreed to reveal the truth gradually, but Kim's direct questioning made evasion difficult. "Sarah, we need your word that what we're about to tell you will remain absolutely confidential," Harrison said. "You have it, but I'm warning you, if this is some kind of elaborate hoax, I'll make sure neither of you works in research again." Maya activated the holographic display and showed Kim the complete footage of the alien ship. Kim's reaction was everything they had expected and more. She stared at the images in stunned silence for nearly a full minute before speaking. "This is why you needed xenobiology expertise," she said finally, looking at Harrison. "You're not just dealing with advanced technology. You're dealing with an intelligence that solved problems we're still struggling with. The question is what we do about it," Maya said. "The ship represents an incredible opportunity, but also an enormous risk. Activating it will announce our presence to potentially hostile alien species." Kim studied the propulsion data more carefully. The energy manipulation principles here could revolutionize everything, not just space travel, but planetary engineering, material science, even fundamental physics. We could solve climate change, resource scarcity, interstellar colonization, all of it. "Assuming we survive long enough to implement any of it," Harrison pointed out. "The ship's records indicate there are species in the galaxy that eliminate emerging civilizations as a matter of policy. Then maybe it's time humanity stopped emerging and started asserting itself," Kim replied. "We can't hide forever. Eventually, someone else will find us. At least this way we'd have the tools to defend ourselves." The debate continued for hours, with each of them exploring different aspects of the dilemma. Kim was strongly in favor of activation, arguing that the potential benefits outweighed the risks. Harrison was more cautious, concerned about the unknown variables involved in first contact with alien civilizations. Maya found herself somewhere in the middle, understanding both perspectives but unable to commit to either. Their discussion was interrupted by another message, this one from Marcus Webb. His response to Maya's initial contact had been characteristically careful, but he had apparently conducted his own research into her claims. His message was brief but intriguing. I know what you found. We need to meet immediately. I have information about Dr. Vasquez that changes everything. Maya, Harrison, and Kim arranged to meet Webb at a secure facility on Luna, one of the few places in the solar system where they could be certain their conversations wouldn't be monitored. The journey gave Maya time to consider what Webb might have discovered about the missing research team. Marcus Webb had always been the most politically aware member of their professional circle, with connections throughout the corporate and government research establishments. If anyone could have tracked down information about Dr. Vasquez's disappearance, it would be him. The Luna facility was a research station operated jointly by several universities, designed to provide neutral ground for sensitive scientific collaboration. When Maya, Harrison, and Kim arrived, they found Webb waiting in one of the secure conference rooms, his expression grim. Before we begin, Webb said, I need to know exactly what you've discovered and what you plan to do with it. The situation is more complex than you realize. Maya provided a comprehensive briefing on her discovery, including the technical specifications she had extracted from the ship's systems and the choice offered by its builders. Webb listened without interruption, taking notes on a secure datapad. Dr. Elena Vasquez was not working independently, Webb said when Maya finished. She was part of a classified research program called Project Looking Glass, funded by a consortium of corporate and government interests. The project's mission was to investigate reports of anomalous technology discoveries throughout the outer systems. Maya felt a chill of apprehension. How do you know this? Because I was consulted for the project's initial phase. They wanted my expertise in systems integration for potentially exotic technologies. I declined to participate because I didn't trust their intentions, but I maintained contacts within the program. Webb activated his own display, showing them classified documents that detailed Project Looking Glass's activities. Vasquez's team wasn't the first to discover alien technology. Over the past 5 years, there have been at least 6 separate incidents involving the recovery of non-human artifacts. Most were fragmentary, but a few provided significant technological insights. Kim leaned forward, studying the documents. They've been reverse engineering alien technology in secret while the rest of us struggle with conventional physics? Worse than that, Webb replied. They've been actively suppressing other discoveries to maintain their monopoly. Several researchers who stumbled onto anomalous findings were either recruited into the project or discredited professionally. Harrison shook his head in disgust. This is exactly why we can't trust institutional authorities with something this important. They turn everything into a weapon or a way to gain power over others. It gets worse, Webb continued. 3 months ago, Vasquez's team activated whatever they found on Kepler 442c. The activation triggered a response from unknown entities, just as Maya discovered. But instead of making contact or attempting communication, Project Looking Glass immediately classified the incident as a hostile act. Maya's heart sank as the implications became clear. They're treating first contact as an invasion. The entire military-industrial establishment is now mobilizing to prepare for what they're calling an inevitable alien assault. They're using the technology they've reverse-engineered to develop new weapon systems and defensive installations. Kim stared at the classified documents. They're going to turn humanity's first contact with alien intelligence into a war, unless we can provide an alternative, Webb said. The ship you discovered, Maya, might be our only chance to establish peaceful communication before the situation spirals completely out of control. Maya realized that her simple quest to buy a piece of salvage property had led her into the middle of a crisis that could determine the future of human civilization. The choice was no longer just about activating an alien ship, it was about preventing a war that could destroy both species. What do you propose we do? She asked. Webb smiled grimly. We're going to steal your ship and use it to make first contact ourselves, before the military gets the chance to shoot first and ask questions later. The room fell silent as the magnitude of what Webb was suggesting sank in. They were talking about defying the most powerful interests in human civilization, risking not just their own lives but potentially the safety of the entire species. But as Maya looked around the table at her 3 colleagues, she realized they were probably humanity's best hope for a peaceful future. They had the expertise to understand the alien technology, the moral principles to use it responsibly, and the desperate motivation of people who had nothing left to lose. Let's figure out how to save the world. Planning their return to Kepler, number 42C proved more complicated than any of them had anticipated. The system was now under military observation following the events 3 months earlier, with automated monitoring stations positioned throughout the outer planets and regular patrol sweeps by armed reconnaissance vessels. Project Looking-Glass had classified the entire system as a restricted zone, officially due to environmental hazards but actually to control access to alien technology sites. Webb's contacts within the defense establishment had provided detailed intelligence about the security measures. At least 3 destroyer-class vessels were stationed in the system at any given time, equipped with advanced sensor arrays designed to detect any unauthorized ships. The monitoring stations could track objects as small as personal shuttles. "We need a ship that won't show up on their sensors," Kim concluded during one of their planning sessions. "Something stealthy enough to get us to the surface without triggering the military response." "Or we need a legitimate reason to be in the system," Harrison suggested. "Some kind of official mission that would give us cover for our real activities." Webb shook his head. Any legitimate mission would be controlled by Project Looking-Glass. They're not going to authorize anyone they don't trust to enter the system, and they definitely don't trust any of us. Maya had been studying the intelligence reports Webb had provided, focusing on the patrol patterns and sensor coverage maps. "There's a gap," she said finally. "The monitoring stations are positioned to watch the primary shipping lanes and the major planetary bodies. But there's a corridor along the system's ecliptic plane where coverage overlaps imperfectly." She highlighted the area on their tactical display. "If we approach from the outer system and time our entry correctly, we could reach Kepler 442C with minimal sensor exposure. The window is only about 6 hours every 14 days when the patrol schedules align properly." Kim studied the trajectory Maya was proposing. "That's a hell of a navigation challenge. We'd need pinpoint accuracy and perfect timing. One mistake and we'd be detected immediately." "I can handle the navigation," Maya replied. "I've spent my entire career plotting courses through hazardous space." "This is just another kind of asteroid field." Webb pulled up specifications for various ship types available through private charter services. "We need something with good stealth characteristics but long enough range to make the journey without refueling. A research vessel might work, if we can get one with the right equipment package." They settled on a modified survey ship called the Pathfinder, operated by a small independent research company that specialized in discrete operations. The ship's captain, Elena Rodriguez, had a reputation for asking few questions as long as the payment was adequate. More importantly, the Pathfinder was equipped with sensor masking technology, originally designed for archaeological surveys in contested space. Securing funding for their mission proved challenging. None of them had significant personal resources, and approaching traditional funding sources would expose their plans to exactly the authorities they were trying to avoid. Eventually, Webb suggested a solution that made Maya uncomfortable but seemed necessary. "We sell some of the preliminary data from your discovery," he proposed. "Nothing that would compromise the ship's location or the full scope of the technology, but enough to generate interest from private investors who understand the potential value." Maya reluctantly agreed, and Webb arranged a series of carefully orchestrated meetings with venture capitalists and technology entrepreneurs who specialized in high-risk investments. They presented their findings as preliminary discoveries of advanced materials and unconventional energy sources without revealing their alien origin. The response was immediate and overwhelming. Within a week, they had raised enough funding not only for their mission but for extensive follow-up research. Several investors wanted exclusive access to whatever they discovered, but Webb had structured the agreements to maintain their independence and control over the technology. The Pathfinder departed Luna on a scheduled research mission to survey asteroid mining prospects in the outer system. To any observer, including military intelligence, it appeared to be a routine commercial operation. Only after they were well beyond the range of Earth-based sensors did Captain Rodriguez alter course for Kepler G442c. The journey to the system took 12 days, during which Maya and her team used the time to finalize their plans for activating the alien ship. They had decided their best approach was to complete Dr. Vasquez's research establishing communication with the ship's builders and demonstrating humanity's peaceful intentions before any military response could interfere. The key is showing them that not all humans are represented by Project Looking Glass, Harrison explained during one of their strategy sessions. We need to prove that our species is capable of peaceful cooperation and scientific collaboration. Kim had been working on modifications to the interface equipment Dr. Vasquez had left behind. I think I can improve the communication protocols. The ship's quantum consciousness operates on principles similar to some theoretical models I've been developing. If I'm right, we should be able to establish much more sophisticated dialogue than Vasquez managed. As they approached the Kepler system, tension aboard the Pathfinder increased noticeably. Captain Rodriguez had become increasingly nervous as Webb briefed her on the security situation, though she still didn't know the true nature of their mission. If we encounter military vessels, what's our cover story? Rodriguez asked during a final briefing session. Asteroid survey as advertised, Webb replied. We have legitimate survey equipment and credible research goals. Unless they board us for inspection, they shouldn't have any reason to suspect our real purpose. Maya spent the final approach monitoring their progress through the sensor gap she had identified. Her calculations proved accurate, and they reached Kepler 442c without triggering any obvious military response. The Pathfinder landed at the same cargo port where Maya had first arrived aboard the Maverick freight, its stealth systems masking their presence from the monitoring stations. The abandoned settlement of New Galveston looked even more desolate than Maya remembered. Several buildings had been damaged by military surveys, their walls torn open to provide access for heavy equipment. The industrial district showed signs of recent activity, with vehicle tracks and equipment staging areas that hadn't been there during Maya's first visit. They've been busy, Harrison observed as they made their way toward Maya's hangar. Looks like they've been systematically searching every major structure. Maya's heart sank as they approached her property. The hangar's main entrance had been forced open, its security systems disabled by military-grade override devices. Inside, they found evidence of extensive investigation. Dr. Vasquez's equipment had been removed, and the alien ship showed signs of having been thoroughly examined. But the ship itself remained intact and apparently functional. As Maya approached the vessel, her scanner detected the same energy signatures she had recorded during her first visit. Whatever the military teams had done, they hadn't managed to fully activate or disable the alien technology. It's still responding, Maya announced with relief. The ship's systems are active and waiting for proper communication protocols. Kim began setting up her improved interface equipment connecting directly to the same access points Dr. Vasquez had discovered. Within minutes, she had established data links with the ship's consciousness, and symbols began appearing on her displays.
The ship recognizes our return, Kim reported.
It's been monitoring human activity in the system and understands that different groups have different intentions. It wants to know which group we represent. Maya approached the ship's hull and placed her hand on the crystalline surface, just as she had during her first visit. This time, the sensation of communication was much stronger and clearer. The ship's consciousness touched her mind directly, bypassing the need for technological interfaces. Images flooded Maya's awareness. The ship's builders, graceful beings with elongated limbs and crystalline exoskeletons that resembled living jewelry. Their civilization had transcended physical limitations millennia ago, becoming entities of pure consciousness that could inhabit any appropriately designed technology. They had traveled the galaxy for eons, seeking younger species that showed promise for similar evolution. The ship was both a gift and a test. Species that approached it with wonder and peaceful intent were invited to join the galactic community and receive advanced knowledge that could accelerate their development. Those who approached it with greed or aggression were quietly eliminated before they could threaten other civilizations. Maya understood now what had happened to Doc Vasquez and her team. They had been taken by the builders not as prisoners but as guests, to serve as ambassadors between humanity and the galactic community. Their disappearance had been voluntary, part of an attempt to establish formal diplomatic contact. But Project Looking Glass had interpreted their disappearance as evidence of hostile action, confirming their belief that first contact represented a threat to be countered with force. The builders were now faced with a difficult decision: accept humanity despite the aggressive actions of its military, or eliminate the species before it could spread its violence to other worlds. "They're giving us one more chance," Maya announced to her companions. "But we have to prove that humanity can choose cooperation over conflict." Kim's interface equipment was now displaying complex technical schematics as the ship began sharing its operational knowledge. The technology was even more advanced than they had hoped, representing solutions to problems humanity was only beginning to understand. Energy manipulation techniques that could transform matter at the atomic level, propulsion systems that could cross galactic distances in days rather than millennia, and most remarkably, consciousness transfer protocols that could allow individuals to survive the death of their physical bodies. "This is what transcendence looks like," Harrison whispered as he studied the data streams. "They're offering us the chance to become something greater than we've ever imagined." But their moment of wonder was interrupted by urgent alarms from Captain Rodriguez aboard the Pathfinder. Military vessels had detected their presence and were converging on their location. They had perhaps an hour before armed teams would arrive at the hangar. "We need to activate the ship now," Webb declared. "If the military gets here first, they'll try to destroy it rather than let us establish contact." Maya felt the ship's consciousness pressing against her awareness, seeking permission to fully activate its systems. The vessel could become functional within minutes, but doing so would announce their success to both the builders and the hostile species they had warned about. "Once we do this, there's no going back," Maya said. "We'll be committing all of humanity to a path we can't fully understand." Kim was already initializing the activation sequence, her hands flying over the interface controls. "Humanity has been stumbling toward this moment for centuries," she replied. "At least this way we get to choose our own destiny." The ship's systems began coming online with a sound like crystalline bells ringing in harmony. The hull patterns blazed with inner light as quantum processors that had been dormant for millennia awakened to full functionality. Maya could feel the vessel's consciousness expanding, connecting to communication networks that spanned the galaxy. Harrison was monitoring the ship's sensor systems as they activated. "I'm detecting multiple contacts throughout the system, not human vessels, something else. The builders are responding to our activation signal." Outside the hangar, the sound of approaching aircraft grew louder. Military transports were landing at the cargo port, disgorging armed teams that would reach their location within minutes. Maya realized they were out of time for careful decision-making. She pressed both hands against the ship's hull and opened her mind completely to its consciousness. "Show them who we really are," she said. "Not the soldiers coming to destroy you, but the dreamers who came to understand you." The ship's response was immediate and overwhelming. Maya felt her consciousness expand beyond the boundaries of her physical form. She became aware of the builder's vast network of transcendent beings, each one a former biological entity that had chosen evolution over extinction. Through the ship's sensors, she could see the military teams surrounding the hangar, their weapons trained on the glowing vessel. She could also see the graceful alien craft that had appeared throughout the system, their builders waiting to see how humanity would handle this final test. "They're jamming our communications," Webb reported from his position at the monitoring station. "The military is trying to call for reinforcements, but their signals aren't getting through." Maya realized the builders were taking control of the situation, preventing Project Looking Glass from escalating the confrontation into open warfare. The next few minutes would determine whether humanity passed or failed its evaluation for membership in the galactic community. The hangar's main entrance exploded inward as military demolition charges blew the doors apart. Armed soldiers in environmental suits poured into the space, their weapons raised and targeting systems active. Maya could see their commanding officer speaking into his communications equipment, probably ordering them to destroy the alien vessel. But as the soldiers approached the ship, something extraordinary happened. The vessel's consciousness reached out to touch their minds as well, not with the gentle inquiry Maya had experienced, but with the full weight of galactic wisdom accumulated over millions of years. One by one, the soldiers stopped advancing and lowered their weapons. Maya could see the wonder in their eyes as they understood, perhaps for the first time in their lives, that they were part of something infinitely larger and more meaningful than any human conflict. The ship's activation was complete, its systems fully functional and ready for whatever humanity chose to do with the gift they had been offered. Maya felt the builders' attention focused on this moment, waiting to see whether the human species would choose the path of transcendence or remain trapped in the cycle of violence and competition that had destroyed so many other civilizations. Standing in the glow of alien technology that could transform the future of human civilization, Maya realized that her 3-credit purchase of an abandoned hangar had indeed been the bargain of a lifetime. But the true value of her discovery wouldn't be measured in credits or technology. It would be measured in the choices humanity made in the years to come. The transformation that swept through the military team was unlike anything Maya had ever witnessed. Hardened soldiers who had entered the hangar ready for combat now stood in silent amazement, their weapons forgotten as they experienced direct contact with an intelligence that spanned galaxies. The ship's consciousness had shown them the same vision Maya had received, but magnified and focused through their military training and strategic understanding. Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Martinez, the team's commanding officer, was the first to break the silence. She removed her helmet and approached the ship with tentative steps, her tactical scanner registering energy readings that defied conventional physics. "My God," she whispered, her voice carrying over the hangar's communication system. "This changes everything." Maya stepped forward, hoping to bridge the gap between the military's mission and the reality they now faced. "Colonel, I'm Maya Chen. This ship belongs to an ancient civilization that wants to help humanity evolve beyond our current limitations. But they need to know we're ready for that responsibility." Martinez studied Maya with the calculating gaze of a career officer reassessing a tactical situation. "Dr. Chen, I presume. We've been tracking your activities since you left Europa. Project Looking Glass identified you as a potential security threat. Because I found something that challenges their worldview," Maya replied. "This isn't a weapon or a threat. It's an invitation to join something greater than any single species could achieve alone." Kim emerged from behind the ship's interface console, her equipment still connected to the vessel's communication systems. "Colonel, the ship's builders are monitoring this conversation. They're evaluating how humanity responds to first contact. The decisions we make in the next few minutes will determine whether our species is welcomed into the galactic community or eliminated as a potential threat." Martinez's tactical training warred with the profound experience she had just undergone. Maya could see the conflict playing out in her expression as she tried to reconcile her military objectives with the reality of benevolent alien contact. "My orders are to secure any alien technology and prevent unauthorized access," Martinez said finally. "But my orders were written by people who didn't understand what we were dealing with." Webb stepped forward, activating his own communication device. "Colonel, I have contacts within Project Looking Glass who can verify what we're telling you. The program's leadership has been operating under the assumption that any alien contact represents a hostile threat. They've been preparing for a war that doesn't need to happen." Martinez gestured to her communications specialist, who began setting up equipment to establish contact with higher command. "I'm going to try to reach General Morrison directly. He's the project's military liaison, and he's been briefed on the strategic implications of alien contact." As the military team worked to establish communications, Maya felt the ship's consciousness growing more active. The builders were becoming impatient with humanity's internal conflicts, their ancient perspective making them intolerant of species that couldn't overcome their own destructive impulses. Harrison had been monitoring the ship's sensor systems, tracking the alien vessels that had appeared throughout the Kepler system. Maya, we're running out of time. I'm detecting at least a dozen ships positioning themselves around key human installations. If we can't demonstrate unified human decision-making soon, they're going to make the choice for us. Maya approached the ship's hull again, pressing her consciousness against its quantum awareness. The builder's response was immediate and clear. Humanity had minutes, not hours, to prove it could choose cooperation over conflict. The species-divided response to first contact was confirming their worst fears about human nature. "We need to get Dr. Vasquez's team back," Maya announced suddenly. "The builders took them as ambassadors, but they're still human. If we can establish communication through them, we might be able to convince the builders that humanity deserves another chance." Kim's interface equipment began displaying new symbols as the ship responded to Maya's suggestion. The ship's consciousness is connecting to the builder network. It's requesting permission to retrieve the ambassador team. Colonel Martinez's communications specialist finally established contact with Project Looking Glass headquarters. The conversation that followed was heated and increasingly desperate as Martinez tried to explain the reality of the situation to commanders who refused to believe that peaceful contact was possible. "General, with respect, your intelligence is wrong. The aliens aren't hostile. They're offering us technology that could solve every major crisis facing human civilization. We need to reconsider our response protocol." The reply was immediate and uncompromising. "Colonel, you are to secure that technology and eliminate any security threats." "That's a direct order." Martinez looked around the hangar at Maya and her team, then at the alien vessel that represented humanity's greatest opportunity and greatest challenge. Maya could see the moment when she made her choice. "General, I'm declaring this situation beyond the scope of our current orders. We need diplomatic specialists, not military action. I'm requesting immediate consultation with civilian leadership." The response from headquarters was predictably hostile, with threats of court-martial and accusations of being compromised by alien influence. Martinez calmly disconnected the communication link and turned to her team. "I'm relieving myself of command and declaring this a first contact situation requiring diplomatic protocols," she announced. "Anyone who wants to follow standard military procedure is free to leave. Anyone who wants to help prevent an interspecies war can stay." To Maya's amazement, every member of the military team chose to stay. The ship's consciousness had affected them all, showing them the broader perspective that military training couldn't provide. They understood that their duty to humanity transcended their duty to any single authority structure. Kim's equipment suddenly blazed with activity as new data streams poured in from the ship's network connection. "I'm getting a response from the ambassador team. Dr. Vasquez is alive, and she's requesting permission to return to establish formal diplomatic contact." The ship's hull patterns shifted to display a three-dimensional holographic image that filled the center of the hangar. Maya found herself looking at Dr. Elena Vasquez standing in what appeared to be a vast crystalline chamber alongside several other humans. Behind them, barely visible in the strange lighting, were graceful figures that could only be the builders themselves. "Maya, I assume that's you," Dr. Vasquez said, her voice carrying clearly through the ship's audio systems. "I've been hoping someone like you would find the ship and complete our work." Maya stepped forward, hardly believing she was conducting humanity's first formal diplomatic exchange with an alien civilization. "Dr. Vasquez, the situation on Earth is complicated. Military forces are treating first contact as a hostile invasion. We need to demonstrate that humanity can choose peaceful cooperation." Vasquez nodded gravely. "The builders are aware of your species' conflicted response. They've been monitoring human communications and are concerned about the militaristic preparations. My team and I have been serving as advocates trying to convince them that humanity deserves a chance to prove itself." One of the graceful figures behind Vasquez moved forward and Maya got her first clear look at one of the builders. The being was tall and elegant, with a crystalline exoskeleton that seemed to be part biology and part advanced technology. When it spoke, its voice resonated with harmonics that suggested multiple levels of meaning. "We are keeper of ancient wisdom," the being said, its words somehow translating directly into concepts Maya could understand. We have observed your species for many cycles, hoping to see the growth that would make you ready for transcendence. Some among you show great promise, but your civilization remains fractured and focused on competition rather than cooperation. Maya felt the weight of speaking for her entire species. Keeper of ancient wisdom, we understand that humanity has many flaws, but we also have capacity for growth and change. The people in this hangar represent different aspects of human society, military, scientific, and civilian, and we've chosen to work together rather than fight. This is a positive indication, the builder replied, but your military leaders are even now preparing to attack our vessels. They interpret our presence as an invasion rather than an invitation. How can we trust a species that responds to friendship with hostility? Colonel Martinez stepped forward, her military bearing evident even in the face of beings whose technology could eliminate human civilization in minutes. Keeper of ancient wisdom, I represent the human military, and I take responsibility for our defensive response. We acted from fear and ignorance, not malice. If you give us time to educate our leadership about your true intentions, we can change our approach. The builder considered this for a moment, consulting with others of its kind in a rapid exchange of harmonics that the ship's translation system couldn't process fast enough to follow. Time is precisely what we cannot provide, Keeper of Ancient Wisdom said finally. Other species are aware of our contact with humanity. Some view emerging civilizations as threats to be eliminated before they can spread beyond their origin system. If we cannot demonstrate your species' peaceful evolution quickly, we may be forced to protect the galaxy from your potential aggression. Maya realized they were facing the ultimate deadline. Humanity had to prove its worthiness for galactic citizenship immediately, or face elimination by species that had made different choices when faced with similar tests. What would constitute proof of our peaceful evolution? Maya asked. Your species must demonstrate unified decision-making in favor of cooperation over conquest, the builder replied. The ship you have activated contains technology that could give you dominance over other human factions. If you choose to share this gift freely rather than use it for advantage, it would indicate growth beyond your current competitive instincts. Maya looked around the hangar at her companions, understanding the test they faced. The alien ship contained technology that could make any nation or organization the dominant force in human civilization. The choice to share it freely would require overcoming every instinct for self-preservation and competitive advantage that had driven human history. We'll need to contact civilian leadership, Martinez said. The decision to share alien technology freely has to come from the highest levels of government and corporate authority. Webb was already working on establishing communication links with key figures in the United Nations, major corporate boards, and scientific institutions. I can reach the right people, but convincing them to give up potential advantages will be incredibly difficult. Kim had been monitoring the ship's sensor systems, tracking the alien vessels positioned throughout human space. We may not have time for extended negotiations. I'm detecting movement from some of the hostile species the builders warned us about. They're approaching the outer edges of the solar system. Maya felt the ship's consciousness pressing against her awareness again, this time with urgent intensity. The builders were running out of patience with humanity's inability to make quick, unified decisions. If the species couldn't demonstrate immediate evolution beyond its competitive nature, they would make the choice to protect the galaxy from human expansion. There's one way to prove our intentions immediately, Maya announced, the solution coming to her with startling clarity. We activate the ship's transcendence protocols and offer the technology to everyone simultaneously. Instead of trying to convince individual leaders, we make the choice for our entire species. Harrison stared at her in shock. Maya, that would mean broadcasting advanced alien technology to every human settlement in the galaxy simultaneously. The social and economic disruption would be enormous. But it would also prove that we're choosing cooperation over competition, Maya replied. The builders want to see unified decision-making. This is the only way to demonstrate that humanity can act as a single species rather than competing factions. Dr. Vasquez's voice came through the ship's communication system with obvious approval. Maya's right. The builders have been waiting for a species that could make exactly this kind of choice. The technology is meant to be shared freely, not hoarded for advantage. Keeper of Ancient Wisdom consulted again with its companions before responding. This would indeed demonstrate the evolution we seek. But you must understand, once this choice is made, it cannot be reversed. Your species will be committed to the path of transcendence, with all its benefits and responsibilities. Maya looked around the hangar one final time, meeting the eyes of every human present. Harrison nodded slowly, his scientific curiosity overcoming his caution. Kim was already preparing the ship's transmission systems, her excitement obvious. Webb gave a thumbs up, his political instincts telling him this was their only viable option. Colonel Martinez and her team stood at attention, ready to support whatever decision their civilian companions made. "We choose transcendence," Maya announced, placing both hands on the ship's hull and opening her mind completely to its consciousness. The ship's response was immediate and overwhelming, its transmission systems activated with power that dwarfed any human technology, broadcasting the gift of the builders to every human settlement, space station, and colony ship in the galaxy. The knowledge flooded outward at faster-than-light speed, carrying with it the blueprints for technologies that would transform human civilization beyond recognition. Maya felt her consciousness expand as the ship's transcendence protocols activated, connecting her to the vast network of evolved beings that spanned the galaxy. She experienced the collective wisdom of countless species that had made the same choice, choosing growth over stagnation and cooperation over conquest. In that moment of transcendent awareness, Maya understood that her 3-credit purchase of an abandoned hangar had been far more than a desperate gamble. It had been humanity's first step toward a future where the boundaries between species, between individual consciousness, and between what was possible and impossible would dissolve into something greater than any single being could imagine. The builder's test was complete. The galaxy was about to become a much more interesting place. As the ship's transmission continued flooding human space with transformative knowledge, Maya Chen, former geological survey specialist, current owner of the most valuable real estate in the galaxy, and now humanity's first ambassador to the transcendent community, smiled and prepared to help her species take its next evolutionary step. The greatest discovery in human history had cost her 3 credits. The price of humanity's future was the courage to share it freely with everyone. For just 3 credits, she claimed an abandoned hangar on a dead moon. Inside lay a dormant starship fortune.